Welcome to this next episode of YouTube, where cooler weather is stimulating some behaviors. I'll start with a little bit of a transition here. A week ago Thursday, we were facing 85-degree temperatures, and it was buggy, it was hot. These wolf pups are growing a good winter coat, so they were not willing to stay up very long during our viewing hours. So I put in a frozen moose head, and we get these moose from the local DNR. This was a hunter harvest moose that was being surveyed for brainworm, and it was cleared of no brainworm, so they freeze it, offer it to us. We freeze it, and on good summer days we find an opportunity for that moose to come out. We see the flies are just really a problem when it's hot, and so we again wanted to give the pups some stimulus, give them obviously some food to eat. We are still feeding the pups twice a day, but sometimes they don't like our breakfast. We might be feeding ground beef or chicken or something like that. They truly are carcass eaters. They prefer to eat their native foods like deer and moose and beaver. So even though we may offer a pound, we want to get at least 2 pounds of meat in the pups every day. Even though we may offer it, they may not be interested, but they're always interested in chewing on a carcass. So we let the pups have this moose, and we lock the adults off, so give the pups a little bit of time. And then when we release the adults, one thing that's interesting to note, if you watch pups come and greet the adults, Boltz is very submissive, ears dropped and tail down, body down. Luna is guarding. She goes and does a little bit of a threat display to Aiden and backs off. This really shows the independence of these two pups. Boltz runs after the adults and goes to greet before he comes back to the carcass, versus Luna, who's just going to guard the carcass. And then about this Wednesday, so about less than a week later, temperatures are in the 60s. And what's going on here is Boltz and Luna, who just finished a pound of beef in the holding area, come out and they're chewing on the carcass from Saturday night. So the pack is fed a carcass every Saturday night as part of the public feeding program, and that's generally when the adults gorge. The pups, again, are fed morning and night. We bring them into holding, or we lock the adults into holding and feed the pups in the main enclosure, but we separate out the adults so that we can make sure that each pup gets a minimum amount of food, and then it's up to them. They can chew and eat whatever they want. So after they had about a pound of meat and they weren't very interested in it, they came out and they started chewing on the deer that was left from Saturday night. So this is Wednesday's feeding. Again, it's pretty dried. It's just the rib cage. That's all that's left from the feeding. But this is a good source of calcium for him. You can see Luna defending a little bit, doing a few threat displays, but fairly compatible. Boltz and Luna get along very well. There's really no issues between them, even though they're not related, and they're 8 days difference between them. They're really very compatible pups. Boltz, again, trying to use his foot to kind of get a little leverage and pull on that carcass. But the chain rattling you're hearing in the background, that's actually Grizzer. Anytime the pups get fed, Grizzer thinks he needs to be fed, which for us is twice a day, and Grizzer is always very stimulated by their feeding, so he gets excited. Well, then he hears a little growling and a little food possession, thinks he wants to be in on it, and he just kind of taps the chain or rattles the chain on his gate. So that's what you'll hear throughout this long series of feeding clips here. And Aiden is very good about leaving the pups alone. Denali doing a little circling there, trying to get in on that carcass as well. But the power that Luna has just by body language, and you can see Denali does a circle and just leaves her. She's doing a little head shaking. She's trying to pull that flesh away from the bone and eat that deer hide. And that body posture of her blocking, her doing those little threat displays, all that communication avoids confrontation. And so we see Denali just kind of leaving her alone. And as I said, Luna can be a little bit snappy towards Boltz. Boltz just drops his ears in a submissive posture and just kind of keeps going. Boltz, being the male pup, is going to be in the male rank order, and so he's going to be kind of used to being subordinate and used to being lower ranking there. Luna, having no other female in this pen, she's going to be used to being dominant and kind of getting her own way. So again, obviously the adults do dominate both pups, but typically they're more gender specific in that rank order, and so we'll see Luna really having no limits here. and Boltz having a lot of limits from Aiden and Denali, and now Luna. So again, but he takes it in stride. He's a very, very submissive pup, and he does real well with it. So while they're feeding the leftover beef, we kind of spread it around the pen. You can see Denali here having a little bit of the leftover beef that we put in the moose skull. So when the pups are done eating, we'll scatter things around the pen, and that kind of keeps Denali a little occupied. Flies are still out. It doesn't, just because it's 60 doesn't mean these flies go away. We don't see them go away till they're probably 30 degrees. But he is still focused on that carcass. You know, he's going to try to, he ate a little bit of beef, he ate a little bit of kibble, but he really wants that carcass. So you're going to see him kind of try again to posture around that carcass. So he turns and walks pretty slowly over there, takes one look at Luna, and just goes back in the woods. So it's an interesting dynamic. Like I say, we are very pleased, certainly, given all that we've been through with Luna, that she's doing as well as she is. And we're even more pleased that she's got the dominant personality that can compensate for physical weakness. And we, you know, again, will continue to monitor, you know, the leg condition, and we are continuing, as I said, to feed supplements. She gets those supplements until probably December, when we reach about 90% of her adult weight. But you can see a little bit of a limp there. You know, she's probably going to have that for the rest of her life, but she's holding her own. She's running. She's doing whatever. And when she loses interest off the carcass, it's not very long before we see Denali recognize that Luna's not defending it, and then he just comes right in, because Boltz is not as possessive, and certainly doesn't have the same relationship with the adults. He's very submissive to the adults, so he's going to just continue to feed, but Denali's going to not respect his possession. Of course, Luna comes over, blocks Denali just by doing a body block there, and then because Denali's still trying, she's going to do a little lunge snap there. And of course Denali is Denali, and just because Luna snaps at him doesn't mean that he's going to stop doing what he's doing. So he's going to try to finish this off. So a carcass, even though, like I say, we feed once a week, a lot of people say, oh my God, they only eat once a week. No, they're eating every day since that feeding. They've been probably chewing on this deer carcass. And one of the reasons why we feed once a week is so they have this opportunity to cache, to chew on bones, and to be able to feed on the remaining carcass throughout the week, several days after the feeding. And these are all really good behaviors, and again, probably more stimulated by the cooler weather, from the standpoint that a lot of times in the summer it's just too hot. You know, things go bad real fast. We have to take food up because it's full of magnets, but in this case, this carcass is actually, it's dried, but it's really not that, because of the cooler weather, it's really not that rank. And it may look rank to those people watching it, but to the wolves, this is a pretty good meal. And again, it's the bones that they're really interested in. They're chewing those rib bones, and that's a great source of calcium for Luna. So as you say, here's Luna coming back to it. Boltz is still kind of eating it, and Luna's going to drag it, try to get away from Denali. But for the most part, again, Denali's not being very aggressive. Luna is, you know, clearly able to feed without having too much strife there. Boltz does a little bit of a face rest and kind of a face-to-face with Denali. It has limited effect. But as you look at this, again, Luna can do a threat display. She's right up in there with Denali. She's not intimidated at all. She has a very good control of situation. And she drags the carcass off for herself. So like I say, you can see the timidness in Boltz. I mean, he's not going to engage like that. So he's really the one that I am most concerned about, to make sure that he has enough resources and enough food. And we will continue to monitor that and feed. And that's Luna giving Denali a little bit of a threat display and a bite, and obviously Grizzer responding to that. So what does Aiden do during this whole thing? What a good pack leader does: stay out of it. And he's going to lay on the rock. His ears are pricked forward. He's alert. He's listening, but he's not getting involved in this. And he's tremendous from the standpoint of letting the pups feed, guarding the pups, and and really kind of taking that leadership role. Also notice his pigmentation has really returned, and he's doing real well. So here's Grizzer, the chain rattler. Again, anytime there's something going on, he's right there in it. Even though he's separated, he's still part of what goes on in this pack. He has the opportunity to climb on top of the den and kind of look in the exhibit pack and see what's going on. He will also, again, be very keyed in at the front of the wolf yard so he can see actually into the medical pen. So anytime the pups are in holding, he's there watching, and he's definitely longing for the bowls of meat that we're feeding to the pups. But you can see a winter coat coming back on Grizzer, a very, very good winter coat. Top of his head is again full of hair, so even though there's a patch that did not actually grow follicles, his head is fully covered with that winter coat. So a little bit of whining, again, just some anxiety, some kind of curiosity, social behavior. He is obviously very clingy to wolf care staff, so it's always very difficult to get really good footage of Grizzer because he's right at your feet most of the time. And we will, see a lot of time and effort. He has the most wolf care staff going in with them. In other words, every individual wolf has their relationship with people. Aiden's narrowed his down a little bit. Shadow clearly has narrowed down his willingness to accept staff. So Grizzer gets all the staff, level 1, 2, 3. Every staff member here that works here is capable of going in with Grizzer. Now, not all of them do out of choice, but he's very tolerant of them. And so this is his favorite part of wolf care, when he gets to roll over and gets the full body massage and gets to interact with people in that way. So that makes it very good for, again, wolf care staff to have a nice relationship with a fairly calm animal. And he, like I said, he's got his moments when pups are being fed, but overall he's pretty relaxed and pretty easy to deal with. Now, if you recall last week in YouTube, I talked about following behavior. We started to see evidence of Shadow following Malik, which is a good indication of dominance, and we predicted that chin resting behavior would be coming next, and here it is. Again, the cooler weather just stimulates hormones, and so Shadow's going to do a little posturing. You can see Shadow's ears prick forward, Malik in the front, ears prick to the side and going back. Shadow's going to rest his chin on Malik's back. These are all ritualized dominance displays that make it very clear that Shadow is in charge. So this is not strife. This is not, them not getting along. This is actually necessary in order to make sure that it's clear who runs this pack, and therefore it actually avoids a lot more conflict. And so we, start seeing these posturing, these cool mornings is when we see it. And Shadow is the master of chin rest. There's no doubt. He can intimidate with just a direct eye stare and a little bit of pressure, downward pressure on the back of the mid-back or on the scruff of the neck, and he gets his point across. So Malik is going to posture a little bit, but notice his tail is low. And again, this is not a real conflicting kind of a situation. This is just communication. This is just saying, hey, I run this pack. And Malik's like, yeah, but every time I get a chance, I'll try for something. That's what wolves do. Malik is an opportunistic, so Shadow is going to think that was not as respectful, so he's going to do a little bit of a ride up, add a little growl, and do a little direct eye contact. Malik's, again, an opportunist. He doesn't necessarily want to take it, so he's going to growl back a little bit, but it's clearly, when you look at these two, Shadow's got the skills to be the pack leader, and he's doing a good job of it. So even when there's just a pack of two. And so we watched that. It was actually quite stimulating to be on a cold morning of 40 degrees and start to see these behaviors. We know winter's around the corner, and winter is the time for wolves. They do well in winter. Cold weather is not a problem. We're done with the heat, we're done with the flies, we're done with all the issues that make them miserable in the summertime, and they're growing winter coats that will make for a very, very comfortable winter. So we're happy to see that, and that's about it. So again, we want to note that the webcam did have some issues. We're having some security issues with our network accepting the webcams, and so we're making the transition to the web streaming. We did put up one cam in the exhibit pack. We hope in the future we can move forward and get Shadow Malik a camera, Grizzer a camera, and then try to put a second camera in the exhibit, trying to figure out where they're spending most of their time, Right now I put it kind of in the front where they tend to feed, and hopefully get some good views of that. I'm trying to figure out, probably the greeting rock is where we'll put the second camera, but hope to transition that in the next month, and thanks for your tolerance for that, and thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.